By the end of this tutorial, I want you to be able to implement this hover effect on links that's really reminiscent to the hover effect you see on the Mac OS dock. And I want you to plug this into your project, and as you see, it works pretty nicely. Ideally, you'd have different images set up over here than the ones that I have. I'm just pulling these images straight from the tutorial that I found online, and the tutorial is says create a realistic hover effect with jQuery, and a link is provided in the document in the notes. And let me see. So this is the tutorial that shows you how to do the effect, and here's the live demo. This tutorial actually shows you two different techniques: a reflection technique up top and a shadow technique, which is the one that we implement. I chose to use the shadow as opposed to the reflection because the reflection technique kind of relies a little bit more on specific background colors, because these buttons and these shadow images, while the effect, the motion is JavaScript driven, they're actually images. And that's the same thing that happens with the shadow. But at least with the shadow, the only real image that I need to worry about is this dark shadowy image that I could edit later and really set up on any kind of background that I want. So to get started, I'm just gonna go to the article and kind of, I mean, it's very short, like a lot of these JavaScript or jQuery articles. They're assuming you know a good deal of, well, a good deal. They're just assuming you know how to implement these. So they're not giving you these step by step as I would in these videos. Essentially, what this code does is it targets specific. When we look over here, it targets a specific div container and all the list items in that container. Since we don't have a nav shadow container, we could change that, and to target what we're looking for specifically, we need to pay attention that once we do that, we really target any changes we make to the JavaScript code. Since this is reliant on an external style sheet to pull those pictures and everything, we need to make sure we make the changes in that as well. So this is a bit more complex than some of the other implementation projects that you may have seen, but this is probably one of the better examples of well, this is maybe like an easy intermediate example, meaning that I wouldn't necessarily classify implementing this as difficult, but I wouldn't call it easy. It's somewhere like on the easy in the middle stage. So anyway, enough of the intro on it. Let's actually get down to business. So how do we get our current page to have this stuff? Well, or that effect anyway. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is just download the pack. And I'll download it right to my desktop. And I'll also take a peek at the demo. And then, of course, the demo always has interesting stuff when you look at the source code, and that's kind of one of the ways you look at it, or at least see what the documentation says, if anything, that we downloaded. So let's take a peek. Let me look on my desktop. Here's the file I downloaded. Oops, here we go. Now, okay, now this has a little bit of stuff in here if you look at it. Let me first just see what this page is. Okay, this is simply the same page that I see online, and why don't I just pop it into Text Wrangler just to take a peek. Okay, I see some stuff going on here. I mean, just kind of taking a quick peek at trying to figure out how this sort of works. There's that nav shadow I saw before, so I know that's how the script's targeting it. This is interesting. Each one of the buttons has a different name. Potentially, that's probably the different colors, I'm assuming. Let's see what else we have in our pack over here. Scripts.js, well, here's all my scripts, not JS rather, but look, so they have, so at the time they made this, they have the jQuery 1.3.2. We won't, in our code, I know we already have the page set up to grab the latest version of jQuery from Microsoft, so I'm not going to need that. This jQuery UI, this is interesting. I don't know why this is here. Maybe I'll find something out later. And the execute is similar to my script.js, which is well, this actually holds the stuff that I need to put into my own script. I likely won't. I'm not going to be just adding another link to this script, but instead I'm going to put this right at the bottom of my script.js. And now let's see what's in our images folder. I mean, we'll see how much of this is actually image driven. So okay, I see this. Now this picture over here is obviously the underneath of the reflection buttons. So again, I know that if I was going to use this, you know, you see, look right over here, this is like a blue background, and if you want to use it against white, you're obviously going to need to edit this picture. Let's see what else we have. Okay, this is icons.shadow, so obviously this shadow is what's underneath these these buttons over here underneath the shadow menu. What else do we have? Okay, the actual icons. Now, I could certainly, it almost seems like I could use this as a template that I could change this to whatever I want, and if I don't want to fuss around too much with it in Photoshop, I could likely just try to position whatever I have in mind as far as icons to be right right there anyway. You know what I mean? I'm sorry, right there. That's a little vague. Meaning that if I was going to make my own icons, say I wanted to use little thumbnail pictures of the big pictures that I have, well, I would probably create a new layer in Photoshop and then use this as like the underneath as a guide. So when I'm putting my thumbnails, I probably wouldn't make them any bigger than this. Of course, I don't have to be limited by that, but the only reason I even think of keeping the constraints within this file here is I'm sure that a lot of the CSS is heavily dependent on the specific sizes of this picture, you know, because this is an image sprite and it's just being positioned around, which kind of brings me back to those buttons that I saw, which is kind of like I'm making a little bit of a connection over there. And page shadow, this is just kind of like a blue background. I'm not sure what this does right now, but well, probably does this. You know, this is probably the background color, and I'm assuming this is that background shadow picture being put over there. So if I take a quick peek now in my CSS, oh, they have resets. Oh, look at that. So he's using the Eric Myers reset over here. I could tell right here. Whatever. I have my own reset. I'm using the YUI, so likely whatever reference I see to this CSS reset in the code, I ought to pull out. It could potentially just be in the HTML anyway. And screen.css, obviously the main style sheet. Look at that. It's importing the reset rules right in there. We'll just pull this out. We won't even need this when we're trying to implement this. But base structure, I'm just looking at this. Hey, if nothing else, so when I'm looking, this guy did a good deal of code commenting, which is telling me at least what's going on over here. Up top is the base structure, so I'll likely be keeping this. Now this says navigation, and it says reflection nav. I likely won't need this since I'm using the shadow nav, and there's all the shadow nav. Just when I'm looking, okay, again, so the CSS is looking for these images in a certain place. So I got to keep this in mind. If images aren't appearing on my page and all that, probably the first place I'll check when I'm trying to do this is just see if my file, if this link is actually pointing in the right place. So alright, we got some stuff to do, and that's just kind of like a brief of the document. Probably the more you use these things, initially that's always the first step. Kind of look at what you downloaded and just see what information you could get just from the get-go.